Okay, we are here in part 8 of the essentials, essential oils, their history and their use. As we begin, just a reminder that this presentation is informational and educational in nature, and that they are just additional tools that you can add to your tool belt of wellness and or ways to improve or bring back wellness. It's not to be construed as medical advice, and that you should always do your own due diligence on any topic that's presented to you, no matter what it is, whether it be about your health or about any other topic that might come your way. And that while every effort's been made to do a complete review, it's not exhaustively comprehensive in all aspects of the topic. So just keep that in mind as we go forward. So tonight we're going to look at an oil that should be a standard standby in your arsenal of essential oils, Eucalyptus radiata. There are actually a lot of different species of eucalyptus. Many of them do have varying different healing properties, but the one that has had the most use as an essential oil is the radiata species. The part that's used are the leaves. So the leaves are steam distilled, so they're put through a distilling process where the oil is extracted from these leaves. Now, I remember growing up having eucalyptus that was ornamental in our house because it smelled good, and the aromatic of all eucalyptus is beneficial. But they had more oval or round leaves around a central stem, as opposed to being the lanceolate, long-shaped leaves that we see here in the radiata species. The key compounds are eucalyptol, which is also known as 1,8-cineol, and alpha terpenol. So the alpha terpenol there is on your left, and it's very interesting that it has some methane groups around the outside, but then it has that central kink through it. So it's a kind of a three-dimensional. They're all three-dimensional molecules, but it has a central chain there in the middle of it, which is very, very interesting. The other one is alpha terpeneol, and alpha terpeneol is the first one there in the series, but there are others that are similar to it, and alpha, beta, and the other terpenols are designating the carbons upon which things are attached. So there's the alpha terpenol is the one that's the active form that's found in the Eucalyptus radiata oil, and the one that has the properties. The other ones are maybe found in other places, or maybe they're made synthetically, and these are the different variations that would be made synthetically. In nature, the form that's present is the alpha terpenol in the essential oil, but in a manufactured scent or oil, you're not going to get the uniform mixture. So in nature, we have L forms and D forms of many different molecules. The L form is the form of life. The D is not the active form. And when they synthetically make those, they can't control for the ratio or even how much is produced. They just haven't figured out a way to make just one variety. And yet nature and the way God designed living systems, they always make the molecules in the bioactive form that's found in life. So that's a strong argument for the fact that God designed our bodies to create those compounds and assemble them in specific ways that are functional and not waste the energy making the wrong kind, which mankind can't do when they're trying to do it synthetically. So some key properties of the eucalyptus are antiviral properties. So they disrupt in a variety of different ways, viral application, replication, and sickness from viral sources. It's antibacterial, so they kill bacteria. It functions as an expectorant, so it's great for things like congestion and things like that because it helps to break up mucus. An analgesic is a painkiller, so it has some pain-killing qualities to it. Insecticidal qualities, so for things like mites or or even mosquitoes can be helpful with that. It's also a hypotensive agent, which means it can help lower blood pressure in particular. So hypo is below, tensive is the pressure or the tension on the blood vessel, so lower tension. So hypotensive. Disinfective. So essentially it's going to make something not, so it won't infect. So disinfective means it won't be causing illness or sickness. And it can also function as a catalyst with other things. So catalyst is a chemical term for a molecule that helps to move a reaction or a process forward with less energy than it would require without it. And enzymes do that same thing in chemical reactions. They function as catalysts. So that's another way that the eucalyptus oil can function. So in World War I, there was a influenza outbreak that was known as the Spanish flu and influenza, 1918, 1919. Eucalyptus was in high demand during that period of time for its antiviral, its disinfectant qualities as an expectorant. Is very similar in nature to what we've just been through, although different origins, because we've had some new technology unleashed on the world of recent, but it still functions in aiding the expectorant qualities, the hypotensive qualities, the antibacterial, antiviral qualities of can be helpful for individuals who are suffering from any kind of properties like that. So for getting a pound of oil, it takes 50 pounds of the eucalyptus leaves to arrive at 1 pound of essential oil. So there's a fairly high amount of plant material that's necessary to result in the usable portion or usable fraction. As I mentioned earlier, there's 300 species, 700 different varieties of eucalyptus. So when they do a genus and species name, it'll be eucalyptus. In this case, it's radiata. And then there may be several different varieties of radiata. So then that would be a third name in the binomial nomenclature. So binomial means two names. That's the two naming system of Latin names for different animals and plants. All life has the two naming system of Carlisle Linnaeus. He is the one who initiated that process. But the third name is a species. So there's slight variation within a species that could be a variety and is known as varieties. So that would be a third name that's sometimes added if there's enough difference between species or individuals or types or kinds within a species. They'll refer to it as a variety. So when you're looking at getting oils, the properties that we're talking about tonight are specific to the radiata. There may be some crossover in different places, in different aspects of different other types of eucalyptus, but it's important to look at the scientific name specifically for the properties that you've seen listed for what you are expecting to have happen. And that's we talked about that earlier in the previous couple lectures, where there was some completely different species names associated with some different properties in different plants and different oils. So the eucalyptus oil blends well with rosemary and peppermint and cardamom. So we'll talk about those later on, their individual properties, but cardamom is kind of a pod. Rosemary is a very easy to grow, as is peppermint, very easy to grow plant that if you have your own steam distiller, you could actually steam distill your own oils, or even just use them fresh because their aromatic properties are going to be profound, even in peppermint and rosemary, just on their own. They have highly volatile and scented scents when crushed or bruised. They release those and are beneficial, but their essential oils blend well with eucalyptus. So you want to use eucalyptus with a carrier oil, especially with sensitive skin or with children. The carrier oil tones down the heat. So sometimes oils will burn a little bit if they're put on the skin. And that is true for eucalyptus. Some people may have tougher skin. So when you use it on your hands, and we'll talk about this later too, you can put it on your hands, your palms, your feet without using a carrier oil. But if it's on other skin, that is not thick. So thick skin has an extra layer that as well as being calloused and thicker just from use, it is more resistant. So the eucalyptus that is shown in this particular picture is the eucalyptus variety that I remember growing up with. So they can extract oils from it as well, but it's not going to have exactly the same properties as the radiata species that we're specifically talking about. In the background there, you can see some leaves drooping down that look like they're more of the radiata species. So we'll talk about some key uses. So again, using the carrier oil with sensitive skin and children in an earache situation. This is one that you can use for earache relief, topically in particular. Dilute it with a carrier oil, apply it to the outer ear. So it's called the auricle, or the cartilage portion that's out catching the sound. You can just rub it on the outer ear, or you can apply it to the bony area directly behind the ear. It's kind of a process there, a bony process that you can rub it on and massage it into. You can also just apply it to the chest area. So you would then be taking it through the skin, through the respiratory system. And many times earaches also have a congestive basis that can be mitigated by opening up those airways with the decongestant effect of eucalyptus. You can also help it with an aromatic treatment, so using just distilling it in the room or diffusing it, but you can also put a few drops into a pan of boiling water that's been taken off. It's not over the stove, but just set it onto a hot pad on your table. And then this gentleman is demonstrating how you would hold a towel over. You could actually completely enclose the pot and just pull that right down and just inhale the vapors out of the vaporizing hot water. And as you inhale those can help with an earache too. And they can also aid with any other kind of congestive or airway restrictive kind of ailment or activity. So congestion, cough, bronchitis, pneumonia. So you again dilute it with a carrier oil, especially when you're using topically. So you massage it onto the chest over the lung area. So we can see a diagram down below of the lungs. The left lung is slightly smaller than the right lung because the heart lower end, the apex of the heart penetrates across the midline and into that lung space. So we have differing lung capacity between left and right lung. Or you can diffuse it just directly into the room using a diffuser, or cup your hands, put a couple drops in your hands, rub them together, and inhale the vapors directly from your hands. So that wouldn't have to be diluted on the palm of your hands, but if you put it on other skin, it can be hot, kind of like oil of oregano. We'll talk about that in a future episode as well. But it can be very hot. I put some on some facial skin as a test the other day, and it was hotter than I expected from having used it on my hands. Incidentally, this technique was one that during a recent illness where I lost my smell about 1.5 years ago, I didn't know I'd lost my smell until I was feeling congested and went to breathe the vapors of eucalyptus in my cupped hands, and I couldn't smell the eucalyptus. So I lost my smell temporarily for several weeks, and it slowly came back. And but that was the thing that tipped me off that I had encountered that issue, because I know what eucalyptus is supposed to smell like. So it dilates the blood vessels and basically enhances the oxygen uptake as it moves through, especially being applied to the chest. So you can make your own vapor rub recipe. It's basically a 1-to-1-to-1 ratio. So 3 to 5 drops of eucalyptus, and 3 to 5 drops of peppermint, with 3 to 5 drops fractionated coconut oil. So fractionated coconut oil is a carrier oil that has been essentially distilled so that it is liquid at room temperature. So most coconut oil is going to be solid at room temperature. It's a saturated fat. Saturated fats are solid at room temperature, but this has been separated, and so there's different fractions or parts, and they skimmed off the liquid portion that would stay liquid at room temperature, making it easier to apply topically with a roll-on device or just with your fingers. and not become solid at room temperature. So it's a special oil. And there are other types of carrier oils you could use too. You can use like almonds or jojoba or some other types of oils. So just if you do 3 drops of eucalyptus, do follow with 3 of peppermint and 3 of the coconut oil or the other, whatever carrier oil you're using. Just use it in a 1-to-1-to-1 ratio. So asthma and sinusitis. So itis, anytime you see itis, it's inflammation in the sinuses. Asthma is a bronchial constriction. Typically, it can happen for different reasons: emotionally induced, cold induced, exercise induced, substances in the air induced. So there's a variety of different things that can trigger asthma. We have an elderly friend who has asthma. She actually has an inhaler, but she remembers as a child having, not before inhalers were in her realm of using, that her mother would bring her eucalyptus leaves to smell, and they would crush them and diffuse them into the room through boiling water, and it really gave her some relief from that. So been used for a long time in that way. So aromatically, a couple drops in the palms of the hands and inhale through the cupped hands. Topically, you could use that vapor rub like we just talked about, apply it to the chest and feet, again using a carrier oil on the skin that's not hands or feet. Basically, it functions as a vasodilator, and vasodilation is going to lower the blood pressure. That's the hypotensive activity that we see in it. So it increases blood flow, and that's good. So it's going to be bringing more oxygen in an asthmatic situation. You have constriction that's taking place. You have bronchial constriction, that is the airway constriction of the little micro airways, or vasoconstriction, which is the arteries and veins constricting down, particularly the arteries. So vasodilation is going to counteract that. You can also gargle, put 1 to 2 drops in water and gargle that. So the lower picture there on the left is a picture of the Eucalyptus radiata. Fevers, so you can use along with peppermint oil, apply it down the spinal column to help fever reduction. So it can have a cooling effect. Peppermint, if you have had a peppermint gum or peppermint ice cream or anything like that, you know, has a menthol, a cooling effect. So using it along the spinal column along with eucalyptus mixed can help with that. Can help with the pain from shingles, itching from shingles, also fever from malaria and cold and flu. So malaria is a parasitic basis. Cold and flu are more toxin basis or viral basis. So diffusing into the room can be helpful from an insecticidal level, as well as just inhaling it and being able to get those aromatic qualities in through the airways. And you can also use it topically, again, along the spine or to the feet. The feet are sometimes the best way to do that for a person who's helping someone else, because it's easily accessible without having to disrupt the person's rest. So you can see a nice sunset on a mosquito here. So its analgesic effect is helped in or noticed in muscle fatigue and pain relief. Dilute it with a carrier oil, and you can gently massage it over the muscles that are sore from whatever activity you might have been involved in, or even just muscle fatigue, just having been tired from doing a prolonged endurance activity, for example. Eucalyptus can also aid in mental function increase and alertness. You can use it in conjunction with rosemary in an aromatic way. So you can diffuse it or inhale it from the palms of your hands. So either way, basically it improves blood flow to the brain. So a normal artery is going to be like the upper left, vasoconstriction. All of our blood vessels have smooth muscle around them, especially our arteries. And that smooth muscle constricts down, and that reduces blood flow. They can also vasodilate. So the normal artery there is pretty much wide open, but those smooth muscle cells can also relax and allow the blood vessel to get larger. And things that disrupt that are things like arterial plaques, which is basically just an inflammation mitigation measure that our body puts together. And oxidized cholesterol is a main inflammatory agent that can cause disruptions in the artery wall. And then wherever there happens to be a weak point in the body, they can end up causing constrictions and failures to occur. So ED, heart failure is an extreme example, brain fog, even peripheral neuropathy in feet and hands, circulatory reductions, cold feet could have a basis of that as well, depending on what your circumstances are. So using eucalyptus can help with that, but the underlying factors still need to be dealt with, and that's basically using the oxidized cholesterol or inflammatory agents, whatever they might be, that are causing the inflammation of the blood vessels in the circulatory system. Also can function as a cleansing and disinfectant agent and help to mitigate dust mites. So in a spray bottle with water, you can put 10 to 15 drops of the essential oil in it. So not a big spray bottle, just an average spray bottle, and mist it where you need it on surfaces, and it will dry fairly quickly. And it also provides just a nice, fresh, clean aroma. But the little dust mites are everywhere and can become a problem depending on where they are. And some people are allergic to them. But they can help, the eucalyptus can help keep them at bay. Wound care. So wound care can benefit significantly from the use of eucalyptus. So burns, wounds and cuts, insect bites, stings, various types of sores. If you dilute it with a carrier oil and apply it to the affected areas topically, it can aid in helping to keep the area antiseptic and antimicrobial, so preventing infection, and make it also speed the wound healing. So one of the reasons that ointments, salves, aloe, neosporin, things like that are put on wounds it works in helping to heal things faster, is it actually provides a medium over which those new cells can creep across and move and close in the gap and regranulate the tissue. Without it, your body will do it too, but you have if you don't keep it fresh and clean and moist, it'll develop a scab, and then that ends up leaving tissue that will cross, but just not as effectively or efficiently, and then you'll end up with pride flesh or scar tissue following a scab, versus having kept it moist with a medium that allows those cells to readily migrate across and regranulate the tissue in as completely as possible. So that's one of the benefits of having some kind of ointment and moisture on a wound that speeds healing. It's also a good cleaning aid. You can add it to vacuum filters. So this is a vacuum cleaner. You just put a few drops onto that. If you've ever started up a vacuum cleaner that's been sitting a little while, you may sometimes notice that it poofs out some dust that leaves a vacuumed smell and not a fresh smell, because it's kind of recirculating dust. But the eucalyptus oil on the filters can help break down the mold and any bacteria that might grow in those filters, leaving that musty smell, or that after vacuum smell, and just help keep things fresh and ready to go. So some research, there are studies that suggest that it helps and benefits pain and swelling following total knee replacement, and diffusing it helps to lower blood pressure and pain levels. This was described by June et al. In the Evidence-Based Complementary Alternative Medicine in 2013. And then we see the Eucalyptus here as 1,8-cineol, reduces mucus production in a novel human ex vivo model of late rhinosinusitis. So a novel, so it's a new human ex vivo. So that's not in a test tube model. So whether that's actually a living system or a model, was a little bit difficult to tell from this particular study, but late rhinosinusitis is inflammation of, so there's a rhinovirus which leads to sinusitis or inflammation of the sinuses. And that was back in 2015 on PLOS One. And then in Phytotherapy Reserves, April 2003, Ranswalk et al. Had an article in vitro antagonistic activity of monoterpenes and their mixtures against toenail fungus pathogens. So the classes of molecules that are in eucalyptus are in the class of monoterpenes, and they can function effectively against toenail fungus, which plagues many people just throughout their lives. But there are other oils too, like oil of oregano, can function as an antifungal agent for toenail fungus. But eucalyptus is another one that can be used in the fight against toenail fungus pathogens. And we aren't the only ones who use eucalyptus, but the koala bear that's what they eat exclusively, is the eucalyptus tree leaves, whatever species they happen to have. There's different types of koalas, and they prefer different types of trees. So God has given us the opportunity to utilize those oils, and they actually utilize the oils just inherently through the consumption of their leaves as their primary dietary source of intake.
To be aware of new videos like this one, be sure to subscribe to the Preparing for the Time of Trouble channel. For more free videos and downloadable audio podcasts, as well as handouts, go to www.preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com. Topic categories include recordings of live seminar presentations, country living, sustainable gardening, homestead remedies, how to be self-sufficient when the grid goes down, wild edible and medicinal plants, hydrotherapy, and end-time Bible prophecies. To take advantage of these free resources, go to preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com.